Around the start of 2019, articles started floating around the internet about the erratic behavior of the magnetosphere and how the poles are shifting. And as usual, the media, in its attempt to sensationalize, didn't do a good job of putting things into perspective. As a result, a plethora of doomsayer videos popped up on YouTube claiming everything from a sudden pole reversal to a complete collapse of the magnetosphere. Here's a clip from one of the many misleading ones you can find.
The Earth's magnetic field is becoming weaker and is rapidly fading. In fact, it is almost 16% weaker since the year 1840. Some scientists think that a big magnetic pole shift is happening right now, and that it will have a major impact on the planet. Researchers have estimated that the planet's magnetic field has already lost 30% of its intensity in the last 3,000 years, and they predict it will drop to near zero in the next few centuries.
Well, first of all, yes, the magnetosphere is getting weaker, approximately 5% per year, but it's part of an overall larger fluctuation that occurs naturally over a long period of time. So it's not depleting every year until it reaches zero. It's just in the downward phase. 30% over 3,000 years is only a drop of 0.01% a year. Secondly, yes, the pole is shifting, but it's happening very slowly. Even though it happens to be moving quicker than usual, it's still very, very fucking slow. It's not all that unusual an occurrence in the history of the Earth for the poles to move around, and nobody is claiming it's going to have a major impact. And even if the poles did flip, it still wouldn't be catastrophic by any means. The Earth has gone through pole reversals many times before, and it didn't collapse the magnetosphere.
It was recently found that the Earth is drinking more water up from the oceans than previously thought, and this could be playing a big part of what is happening inside the planet, causing the magnetic poles to go haywire.
What? Now, I'm not an expert by any means, but by what mechanism would that even fucking work? The ocean water on the surface of the Earth is nowhere near deep enough to get through the crust and all the way down to the core. And although the ocean does affect magnetic fields, as salt water is a conductor, it's marginal compared to the iron core dynamo itself. So there's no reason to believe that some sort of alleged accelerated water cycle evaporation would have a discernible effect on the magnetosphere.
If the roving magnetic field keeps moving, it's possible that in 100 years from now, people will see the northern lights in a different place than today. It is also possible that a sudden reversal could bring with it more dire consequences other than just being able to see the auroras in weird places.
Okay, this is where the video gets into its money-making clickbait phase.
There isn't anything good about any planet losing its magnetic field. Without a geomagnetic field, human technology would be at risk. Satellites can and already do suffer damage from solar storms. There are currently about 1,100 satellites in orbit around the planet. One by one, each of these satellites, which are protected by the Earth's magnetic field, would be damaged and stop working. Many systems on the planet, including those used for navigation, would fail. You could say goodbye to any GPS system, as they would be rendered useless. There would be global power outages, and many electronic devices would be damaged and become useless. Cosmic rays and solar wind would be extremely harmful to all life on the planet.
Wow, that would be pretty bad. But he's talking about a complete loss of the magnetosphere, and as I pointed out before, nobody is suggesting that is actually going to happen, even if the poles do flip suddenly, which nobody's suggesting either.
And the Earth would be constantly bombarded by a stream of deadly particles. The effect of cosmic rays on the human body could be terrifying. About 50 different species of animals use the magnetic field for navigation, and especially birds, like the homing pigeon. Without the magnetic field, these animals would basically be blind and unable to orient themselves. Sea turtles would get lost at sea, birds would migrate, creating massive die-offs, and honeybees would be lost trying to find their hives, which would greatly impact the pollination of flowers and plants, those plants in our food crops that the human race relies on.
Well, again, the magnetosphere isn't going to vanish, but the movement of the poles would be a problem for birds and turtles and even our GPS systems. If it wasn't so slow going a process. But since it typically takes centuries or more to happen, the animals can adjust and so can we.
In the end, after all life was extinguished and the last remaining humans moved underground.
Hate to nitpick, but if humans move underground, then technically all life was not extinguished.
When looking at satellite imagery, it can be seen that part of the magnetic field has already reversed in the southern hemisphere and is called the South Atlantic Anomaly. Something that the scientists call the reversed flux patch is moving to the west and has doubled in size over the last 60 years and now covers 20% of the planet's surface.
Well, that was wholeheartedly misleading. The South Atlantic anomaly is a weak point, but what they fail to mention is that there are also strong points on the Earth as well. It's all just part of the natural fluctuations and churning of the magnetosphere. But the 3D model he's using here isn't accurate either. This is what it actually looks like, and if you can see, the weak areas are balanced out by the strong ones. The image he's pushing makes it look like most of the planet is some big gaping hole. Also, reversed flux patches aren't the same thing. He tries to gloss that over without providing any distinctions so that you mistakenly conflate the South Atlantic anomaly with it. Flux patches are regions of the core mantle boundary where the local radial flux deviates from the hemispheric radial flux. The video wants you to think that 20% of the Earth's surface has a diminished magnetosphere when that's not actually what it means.
Scientists simply do not have enough information to make any conclusion of what is going to happen. But it's certain that the poles will reverse again at some point. The consequences for life on Earth are potentially devastating, and experts in solar radiation say that parts of the planet will become uninhabitable. This event will affect all creatures on the planet, as well as the effects on our electromagnetic system, the electric grid, and all things considered part of our modern civilization.
Expert fear-mongering right there. I love how he starts by admitting that nobody knows what's going to happen, by which he really means that there is no evidence that any of the aforementioned bullshit is coming to pass. And then he goes on to use definitive language like, will become uninhabitable, will affect all creatures on the planet. Again, trying to hype up the viewer into thinking that any of this is likely to happen. I think it's safe to say that if this was a real existential concern, you'd be hearing about it from more than just crackpot YouTubers.